Welcome to our deep dive into the state of film. Specifically, we're looking at what's happening in the indie film scene, articles on festivals, awards, and even some interesting opinions about where it's all going. You ready to see what's shaking things up?
Absolutely. What we're seeing is a fascinating mix of celebrating success, but also taking a hard look at the realities of independent film in 2025.
Okay, let's start with the awards. Everyone loves a good underdog story, right?
Right.
Well, the 2025 Film Independent Spirit Awards saw Sean Baker's film Anora just completely sweep the awards. Best film, best director, best lead performance for Mikey Madison.
It's interesting, the Spirit Awards often predict what will happen at the Oscars, especially for certain awards like these. The films and performances the Spirit Awards highlight often go on to get even more attention and praise.
So are we saying we should add Anora to our Oscar predictions? The quiz we totally have, by the way.
Maybe. But you also have to remember that Dreams, a Norwegian queer love story, won the Golden Bear at the Berlin International Film Festival. Berlinale, that's another festival with a pretty good track record of predicting Oscar success.
Oh, so we've got two films to add to the watch list. Are you noticing this trend? International stories, new voices. I wonder if this is telling us what audiences are really looking for these days.
Maybe.
Speaking of awards that have a knack for predicting the Oscars, Say Nothing just won the Scripter Award for Best TV Adaptation. Just to remind everyone, the Scripter Award is given by the USC libraries to honor, adapting writing to the screen.
And Say Nothing beat out some pretty big names like Slow Horses to win. The Scripter Award is definitely something to keep an eye on. It's as good at predicting Oscars as the Spirit Awards. Remember when American Fiction won both?
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, so we've got indie films making a splash at all these fancy award shows. Seems like a good thing. But then we get to Sean Baker's speech after winning Best Director at the Spirit Awards. He talked about something kind of serious, the financial struggles that indie filmmakers face. It wasn't just a happy speech. It was more like a call to action.
It's like he was saying, hey, we're winning these awards, but it's getting harder and harder to even afford to make these films. He was pretty clear about how it's getting harder to make money and how important upfront payments are for filmmakers to be able to support themselves while they're making art.
He kind of pulled a network moment for indie film, right? Passionate, raw, and hopefully people were actually listening. So is this a sign of a real crisis in indie filmmaking, or is Baker just being pessimistic?
Well, a lot of independent filmmakers are struggling with the same problems that Baker talked about. The old ways of financing and distributing films aren't working as well as they used to, especially with how much streaming has changed things.
So are indie films basically doomed then? Is this the end?
Well, not necessarily. Some filmmakers are finding ways to be really successful even with everything changing. Like Eric Fegg, for example, and his production company, Picture Start. They had a fantastic Sundance this year. They sold their body horror film Together for a cool $15 million. And that's not even their only success. They were also behind some other big Sundance hits recently, like Theater Camp, Cha-Cha Real Smooth, and Am I OK?
So what's Fegg's secret? How's he doing so well in what everyone says is such a difficult market?
Well, it's not just luck. Fegg has a strategy. He makes films with smaller budgets and knows exactly who he's making them for. This lets him reduce the financial risk, but still deliver high-quality content that people want to watch.
So it's like finding that perfect balance between creativity and smart business. Make films that are artistic and interesting, but also make sense financially.
Exactly. Fegg proves that indie films can be financially successful even when the industry is changing. It's all about adapting, having a plan, and understanding the new rules. But the challenges that independent films are facing are not just about money. Sometimes it's about protecting the actual places where films are made and watched. We can see this happening in Italy right now. There's a new law in Italy that could put a lot of cultural places in Rome at risk, including more than 50 cinemas.
This is the kind of thing that makes you just want to scream, right? These are places full of history, places where legends of cinema worked and amazing films were shown, and now they might be turned into shopping malls.
It's pretty concerning, not just for Italian cinema, but for film culture around the world. These places represent a history that we all share. Losing them would really make us think about how much we value these kinds of cultural spaces, especially in a world that's changing so fast.
The good news is there's been a lot of pushback against this new law. Martin Scorsese, the legend himself, started a petition to protect these cinemas, and he's got some serious support. Big names like Jane Campion, Wes Anderson, and tons more. Even Renzo Piano, that famous architect, wrote a letter to Italian leaders asking them to reconsider, and over 500 filmmakers from all over the world signed that letter. Amazing, right?
Yeah, it really shows you how global cinema is. These places aren't just buildings, they're symbols of our culture. Losing them would be a huge loss for the arts.
It reminds us that these fights are about more than just money. They're about protecting the heart and soul of film, making sure that people in the future have access to the same rich history that we've been lucky enough to enjoy.
Okay, let's switch gears for a bit. We've talked about how indie films are doing great and how they're struggling, but how are TV shows changing? Especially those classic crime dramas, procedurals. You're right, we're seeing this really cool blend of classic storytelling with new ideas. Take CBS's new show, Watson, for example. It's a medical drama, but it's set in the Sherlock Holmes universe. And it stars Morris Chestnut.
Interesting. It seems like networks are finally understanding that they need to do something new. Audiences these days are smart. They want something different. There's also that ABC show, Dr. Odyssey, and NBC's The Hunting Party. Each one has a fresh take on the classic procedural format.
CBS really seems to be leading the way with these new ideas. They also have Elsbeth, which is a spinoff from The Good Wife, featuring that lawyer everyone loved, the one who was kind of quirky. And then there's High Potential about a detective who has a pretty unique way of solving crimes.
It's like they took the procedural format and added something unexpected, something new. And of course, we can't forget about streaming services. They're always pushing the limits, trying new things with shows like Poker Face and The Pit. These shows really play around with how they tell the story and how they develop characters. It's like the whole idea of what a TV show can be is changing right in front of us.
Exactly. The lines between regular TV and streaming are getting blurrier and blurrier. That's leading to some really exciting changes in how stories are told. Things are constantly changing. It's a really dynamic landscape. And speaking of change, let's talk about YouTube. Remember when it was just a place for silly cat videos and people who wanted to be musicians? It's hard to believe that was only 20 years ago.
I remember those days. I probably wasted way too much time watching those cat videos. It's amazing how much YouTube has changed in 20 years.
I know, right? It went from this weird online platform to a huge force in the entertainment industry. Get this. YouTube is the most watched streamer on TVs in the US. It's even surpassed Netflix, Disney, even Amazon in how much time people spend watching it.
Wait, are you saying that YouTube is basically the new TV?
For a lot of people it is. In 2024, people spent 27% more time streaming on YouTube. And their ads earned almost $10.5 billion just in one quarter. That's serious business.
It's like they took the idea of flipping through channels and brought it online. But why is it growing so much? Is it just because people miss those old cat videos?
It's more than just nostalgia. YouTube is successful because it has so much different content. You can find everything there, from educational videos and documentaries to people playing video games. And yes, even those old cat videos. It's a platform that shows off all the different things that people are interested in.
So it's not just about the stuff you can watch, it's about feeling connected. YouTube gives people a way to share what they're passionate about, to find others who like the same things, to learn, and to be entertained in the way they want to be.
Exactly. It gives power to both the people making the content and the people watching it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today. Indie films doing well, but also facing problems. Old TV shows getting a new look. YouTube becoming this giant entertainment thing. And even those historic cinemas that might be torn down. That's a lot to think about.
It is a lot. But it all points to how much the film and television industry is changing. It's a constantly changing world, full of challenges, new opportunities, and surprises.
So what's standing out to you? What's making you think about the industry in a new way? Or is there something that's raising new questions for you?
Well, something I've been noticing is this trend towards less traditional casting. You know what I mean? It's like Hollywood is finally realizing that talent doesn't have to come from the same places it always has, and audiences are ready for something new faces, new perspectives.
Oh, yeah, totally. It does feel like we're moving away from that old way of doing things. Always putting big stars in every lead role. Like, remember Mikey Madison and Anora? She wasn't really that well known before that film, but her performance was just amazing. It's like those smaller indie films are where the next big stars are coming from.
Exactly. And it's not even just about finding new talent. We're also seeing actors who are known for certain types of roles do something completely different. Like Christopher Walken in Severance, for example. I mean, Walken, he's built his whole career on these really eccentric, sometimes villainous characters. But in Severance, he plays Bert, this really kind, even romantic character. It's so different from what we usually see from him, and people love it.
Yeah, it's like seeing a whole new side of an actor you thought you knew. It makes you really appreciate their range and their willingness to take risks. Do you think this change in casting is also helping directors and writers from backgrounds that haven't always been represented get more opportunities?
Oh, definitely. The Film Independent Spirit Awards this year gave awards to a lot of films and TV shows made by women and people of color. Baby Reindeer, that comedy series, was a big winner on the TV side. This kind of recognition is really important for creating an entertainment industry that's more inclusive and representative, don't you think?
It's about time, right? For so long, Hollywood has been controlled by a really small group of voices, but it finally feels like we're seeing some real change in terms of who's telling stories and whose stories are being told.
It's definitely a step in the right direction. And it's not just about representation. It's about making cinema better with more stories and different points of view. So we've talked about awards, about how indie film is doing, and even touched on how TV is evolving. What does it all mean for the future of film and TV? Where do you see things going?
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? What does the future hold for storytelling with everything changing so much?
Well, one thing that seems pretty clear is that the future of entertainment is going to be full of surprises. We're going to keep seeing people try new ways of telling stories. Those lines between film and television are going to get even blurrier, and we'll see even more of a focus on diversity and inclusivity.
And don't forget how much influence those streaming services have now. They're not just places to watch things, they're becoming big studios themselves. It's like everyone's trying to grab a piece of this new entertainment world.
That's a great way to put it. And with all these changes come new challenges and opportunities. How are those traditional studios going to adapt? Will independent filmmakers still have the freedom to be creative when everything is getting more corporate? These are things we need to figure out as things keep changing.
You've got me thinking now. It feels like we're at a really important moment, and it's hard to say for sure what's going to happen. But as someone who loves film, it's really exciting to watch it all unfold.
You know, speaking of exciting things, remember when Amazon bought MGM back in 2021?
Yeah, that was huge. Everyone was wondering what was going to happen to James Bond. Would he be ordering martinis on Prime?
Yeah, and it seems like things are starting to change. Jerry Rich, the head of theatrical marketing at Amazon MGM Studios, he just quit.
Is there something more going on here, or is it just a normal resignation?
Maybe. Rich was the guy behind the marketing campaigns for some really big Bond films like No Time to Die and Creed 3. He leaves right when Amazon is taking full control of the Bond franchise.
Do you think this could mean that Amazon is going to change how they promote and release those Bond films in the future?
It's definitely something to think about. Amazon owns Prime Video, right? One of the biggest streaming services out there. It wouldn't be surprising if they decided to put those new Bond films straight on Prime Video, skipping movie theaters entirely.
Wow, that would really shake things up in the film industry, but it would also be a lot risk. Bond films are all about that big budget spectacle. They bring in so much money from theaters all over the world. Would people be as excited to watch a new Bond film on their TVs at home?
Hard to say. It would be risky, but it could also change everything. If Amazon could successfully bring Bond to streaming, it might encourage other big film franchises to do the same. It could be the beginning of a whole new era for those blockbuster films.
It feels like we're on the edge of another big turning point in entertainment, with these huge tech companies possibly changing how we watch films completely. The stakes are really high, and it's hard to know what's going to happen. But like you said, it's going to be exciting to see how it all plays out.
Definitely. And, we haven't even touched on the world of independent film festivals. From Sundance to Berlinale, those festivals are still super important for finding new talent and showing off innovative cinema.
Yeah, those festivals are so important. They're like the heart of the indie film world. They give filmmakers a place to connect with audiences, with critics, with people in the industry. So many of the most famous directors and actors we know got their start at these festivals.
Right. And they're always changing, too, finding new ways to support and promote independent films. Like, for example, the Dublin International Film Festival just announced this really cool opportunity for new filmmakers called the Virgin Media Discovers 2025 competition.
Oh, tell me about it. I love hearing about new talent. What's the competition all about?
It's a pretty awesome opportunity. Filmmakers, writers, anyone who creates content can submit ideas for short films that can be made into full series. The winners get to premiere their films at the Dublin International Film Festival in 2026.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like going straight from a short film idea to a possible TV series deal. I bet it's super competitive.
Oh, it is. But that's what makes these festivals so exciting. They give talented people a chance to show off what they can do and maybe even change their careers forever.
It's a reminder that even in an industry with so many big studios and powerful streaming services, there's still a place for new voices and innovative ideas to break through.
Exactly. That's why these festivals are so important. They are the heart and soul of independent filmmaking.
So we've talked about so much today. We've explored the good and the bad for independent film, how television is changing, how YouTube is becoming this huge player, what might happen with James Bond, and how important those film festivals are for new talent. It's been quite the journey.
It has. It's just a small look into the constantly changing and complicated world of film and television.
Okay, this deep dive has been really incredible so far. Before we wrap things up, I'm curious about something. Is there anything we've talked about today that really stood out to you? Anything that's made you think about the industry in a new way? Or maybe even sparked a new question in your mind? It's kind of interesting when you think about it. All these different things we've been talking about, they're all connected in a way. Indie filmmakers trying to stay afloat financially while also pushing the creative boundaries, traditional TV shows changing for this new world of streaming, platforms like YouTube becoming these huge entertainment forces. It's like the whole industry is constantly changing and adapting.
It's a dynamic dance, isn't it? And it really makes you wonder, what does this mean for storytelling in general? How will all these changes affect the way we watch and experience film and television in the future?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? What will happen to the stories we tell and how we tell them? It's almost impossible to know for sure, but that's also what makes it so exciting. It feels like we're right on the edge of a completely new era of entertainment, one with endless possibilities.
I think one thing is pretty clear. The line between film and television is getting blurrier and blurrier. We're seeing more filmmakers and actors going back and forth between the two. And the difference between what makes something a movie and what makes it a TV show doesn't seem as important anymore.
It's all about the story, right? Whether it's 2 hours on the big screen or 10 hours on a streaming platform, it's the quality of the story that really grabs people in the end. And speaking of stories, we can't forget how important those independent film festivals are. They really help new talent grow and show off fresh perspectives.
Definitely. Festivals like Sundance, Berlinale, and even those smaller, more specialized ones are crucial for filmmakers who might not get their work seen by a lot of people otherwise. They're so important for encouraging diversity and new ideas in the industry.
Yeah, they're like the starting point for the next generation of filmmakers, and they're so full of creative energy, often showing films that do things differently and push the limits of storytelling.
And we can't forget how important those festivals are culturally. They bring people from all over the world together to celebrate film, to have important conversations, and to find new voices and perspectives. They remind us that film is more than just entertainment. It's a powerful way to create understanding, empathy, and connection between different cultures.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away from our conversation?
Well, for me, it's how resilient and adaptable the film and television industry is. Even with all the challenges and uncertainties, that passion for storytelling is still really strong. Filmmakers are finding new ways to connect with people, to tell their stories, and to make sure their voices are heard. And that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I totally agree. It shows you how powerful film and television can be. They can move us, they can challenge us, and they can help us understand the world in new ways. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep watching, and keep believing in the power of stories. The future of entertainment is looking pretty bright, and I'm really excited to see what happens next.